to expressing how it had changed my outlook and overview on things. And that book was by Gary Keller. It was called The One Thing. I was used to working 100-hour weeks. I'd done it for probably 20 years straight. I'd had no problems with working it. But once I had my family, once I had kids, and I was sitting there looking at, do I put another 50 hours of work in this week, or do I take the time and spend that with my kids? And the only answer I can honestly give is I need to spend that time with my kids. And I hear a lot of people that'll argue, and it's like, well, I got to build a legacy for my kids. I've got to do this. I don't think there's a single person in the world, or a single child in the world, that would say, I'd rather my dad or my mom work 100-hour weeks so that way I could have a nicer house, than they would say, I'd rather spend time with my mom. And they might not be able to understand that, but, I watched a TED Talk one time, and it completely changed how I looked at things. It was a TED Talk with an ambulance driver, and that ambulance driver was doing a presentation on his experience with spending the last few minutes of time in most people's lives. He would show up at a car accident scene or something like that, and he's dealing with a car accident victim, and he knows that this person doesn't have long to live. There's nothing he's going to be able to do to save them. And he would have these conversations with hundreds of people. That was his job. And he revealed the three things that he found to be most compelling when he was having these conversations. And he said the three things that he heard most often when having these conversations with people that were facing the end of their life was, regret for the time they didn't spend with their family. There was never a time where somebody's like, man, I wish I spent more time with my Lambo. That's one of the main reasons why I don't like talking about that. I don't flash the Lambos. I don't flash the fancy houses, because I don't think that should be what motivates people. And if that's what motivates you, good. But I mean, really, for me, what motivated me was time with my family. And that guy doing the TED Talk, he was like, I never once heard somebody say, I wish I had more time with my house. I wish I had more time with my car. He always said, they always regretted the time they didn't spend with their family. And the next thing that they regretted was the opportunities they didn't take. I wish I would have went on that trip to my dream vacation. I wish I would have taken the time to do this and that. And he said, hands down, those were the two things that people regret the most. Getting this business started, you're going to have to hustle. There's nothing I can do to explain that to you, but each and every one of your hustles might be a little different. And some of the things that I hope to be able to help y'all out with on today's show is building a business that supports itself, and you're not having to do all the different things in between. Now, getting started, let's just talk about wholesaling. Like for me, I didn't get started wholesaling. Wholesaling was something I did probably 5 to 6 years into my investing career. I started out flipping. I personally prefer flipping. If I had anything to say, I would flip all day long. But let's talk about wholesaling. There's, within wholesaling, probably 8 or 9 different, very specific personalities / jobs that have to be completed when you're doing this. For one, let's just talk about marketing. Like, I can't say that there is anything more important in wholesaling than marketing. I know a lot of people focus on the negotiation. A lot of people focus on that part of it. But if you can't get the marketing piece done, your ability to negotiate isn't even going to be apparent, because you'll have no one to talk to. That's why I consider marketing to be the most important piece of a wholesaling business. More often than not, when I have somebody explaining to me that they're struggling in wholesaling, the very first thing I dig in on is their marketing, because I guarantee almost hands down, like 99 out of 100 times, the piece that people fail at is the marketing piece. But that is an entire full-time job. It is. I mean, there's a lot more to marketing than just skip tracing and calling some phones. There's a lot more to marketing than creating a website and leaving it be, or sending out some postcards or letters. Marketing is a full-time job. Well, if you're wanting to do wholesaling and you're the only person there, you just acquired a full-time job. What else is there to do when you deal with wholesaling? Well, you've got the obvious piece, which is the acquisitions. That's the one we were touching base on. You've got to understand the negotiations. You've got to understand the follow-up process. You've got to understand all those different aspects of that job. But guess what? When you're doing marketing and you're doing marketing well, acquisitions becomes a full-time job. You're going to be fielding phone calls. You're going to be going out there to properties. If you're not doing virtual, you're going to have a lot of tasks involved just with acquisitions. And guess what? The better you are at these first 2 projects, the more jobs that you're going to acquire. Now you have marketing And now you have acquisitions. Well, guess what happens if you do good at both of those two? You're going to need a transaction coordinator. You're going to need somebody that's constantly following up with that seller. You're going to need somebody that's constantly following up with the title companies, with the banks, with the foreclosing attorneys, with the probate attorneys. You're going to need somebody that's full-time responsible, especially if you're really good at acquisitions, because guess what? You're going to have multiple contracts. You're going to have multiple properties going to closing. That is, guess what? Another full-time job. We're now up to 3. Now, some of y'all are sitting here already thinking about this and you're looking at this, and this is why I see a lot of y'all failing, because you're trying to do the jobs of 9 different people and you're trying to do them all well. And I'll continue through this, but you've got marketing, you've got acquisitions, you've got transaction coordination, you've also got dispositions. You need to sell that property to somebody. And after all this is wrapped up and said and done, you're probably going to need somebody to manage just the overall operations. So we're up to like 5 people just at that. How many people really think they're going to be able to do 5 jobs full time? Now, there's going to be some people in here that are arguing with me like, well, I'm the only person at my company right now and I've closed 5 deals. Great. Let's ramp that up. Let's get you up to 50 deals, 60 deals, 100 deals. 10, 15, 20 deals a month. Now, once that comes, you've obviously got the income to come, but there's a lot more to building that team. And it's not as apparent, especially for someone that's never been an entrepreneur before. And those are some of the bigger failures that I made in my life. But let's talk about that person right now that's just now getting started out, that hasn't knocked down a deal, or maybe is knocking down deals, but isn't doing it consistently. Let's paint that picture. Here's a very common scenario I see for people that are doing deals, but they're struggling with consistency. And I've had this conversation numerous of times. Like, man, I had a very, very positive conversation. I can't believe how excited I was. There's a guy I've been talking with for probably nearly 5 years that's been struggling to really gain his foothold in this business. And the thing that I've repeatedly told him time after time after time is find what you do the best in this business and outsource the rest of it to someone else. I have told this to this person for probably 5 years straight. And while he has attempted to do this from time to time, he finds himself trying to do it, making the right actions to get it done, actually building up his team, and then it falls apart. And then he starts over from ground zero. Well, I think he's finally attempted that enough times that he figured out the process. And he just sent me a message about 2 or 3 days ago. He closed like $276,000 in profit in the last 90 days. That is an amazing quarter for someone to go through. $276,000 in business profit in 90 days. That is a business that I think most people would be proud to work through, but he took close to 5 years to finally pull that off. And here's a very common example of why this happens. Especially for the people that are knocking down 5, 6, 7 deals a year, 10 deals a year, where they're getting deal flow, but it's not what they're looking to do. You have no deals. I'm going to paint this picture. You have no deals. So what are you doing? You're scrambling to market. You're doing all kinds of marketing. You're pushing your marketing out there, and you get a really good marketing plan put together, and you're pushing that out. All right. If you're doing that and you're doing that well, what's going to happen? You're going to start getting phone calls. If you start getting phone calls, oh, wow. Did I mess up? Do I happen to have audio coming through? Let me double check a few things. I think I just realized that my stream is down. Let me double check my stream real quick. Nope. I completely and totally butchered it. It says I've got people watching. I don't see any feedback. I'm okay. All right. Apparently I'm live on Facebook, but I didn't go live on YouTube. If there's anybody watching on YouTube, send me a message, but apparently this didn't go live on YouTube. Well, it's a technical issue. I'll have to deal with it later, I guess. All right. Well, for the Facebook people out there, my apologies. All right. Well, let me go back and hit this again. You're going out there, you're pushing out tons of marketing. You've got your marketing set up. You've got your marketing going. All right. YouTube did go down. It happens. All right. You're pushing out your marketing and your phone call starts ringing. Your phone starts ringing. Your phone's ringing, 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 ringing. Guess what your full-time job just transitioned to? You're not marketing anymore. You are now handling acquisitions. And now that you're doing acquisitions, guess what you're not doing? You're not marketing now. Your marketing starts dropping. Your acquisitions start going up. You're fielding a bunch of phone calls. You're getting a bunch of appointments. You're going on appointments, doing good. Now you've picked up a couple contracts. Now, if this starts sounding familiar to some of y'all, you've experienced this before. Now you're picking up a couple of contracts. Now that you've got these contracts, now what are you doing? You're handling transaction coordination. You're handling disposition. You're handling all of these different little things going on with the office. Guess what you're still not doing? You're not doing your marketing. You might be not doing as well on your acquisitions. You're out on appointments. You're doing dispo. You're not answering that phone call like you should. You're going out there. You're going to title. And now what you find is that you just cashed a check and you're excited. You got your deal done. You pulled off 20 grand, but that's the first 20 grand you've made in 3 or 4 months. So it kind of goes to paying back some past due expenses. And now you're starting all over again. But guess what? Your phone's not ringing now. Why isn't your phone ringing? Because you had to put the marketing on pause to take care of acquisitions, transaction coordination, and dispositions. And then you go through the cycle again. You turn your marketing back on, your phone starts ringing, and you find yourself in this cycle of it not stopping. That is the common place that I see most intermediate to novice real estate investors in. You've got to build a team. And I've said this over and over again. You got to build a team. You got to build a team. Well, what happens whenever you don't have the budget to build a team? What happens when you don't have the processes for building a team? That's what I'm going to talk about right now is like, I went through and I built a team. I built several teams. And every single time I found myself on the other side of that team wondering what went wrong. I have my strengths. I have the things that I find myself able to do extremely well. One of the things that I do not do extremely well is create systems. I'm more of a solopreneur. I'm really good at figuring out what needs to be done and doing it. I'm not really good at putting out a system that someone else can follow and train them on how to do it. So really up front, probably one of the first things that I personally should have done is found somebody that was good at systems, found somebody that was good at processes. They didn't have to be an acquisitions person. And I'm not going to say that this is how everyone needs to build their team, but I should have found somebody that was really good at systems that could come in and look at what I was doing and say, okay, this is the process that needs to be followed. This is what we need to do to move this company along and let them build my systems. Well, guess what? If you're really good at systems, maybe you can kind of start creating a system or find somebody that's really good at marketing. One of the first things you need to do in this business is marketing. So if you're not doing good at marketing, but you're good at acquisitions or you're good at transaction coordination or you're good at systems, find someone that is good at the thing that you hate. I hate systems. So look at what you're doing on a day-to-day business. What gives you energy? What excites you? All of this goes back to a lot of what I learned from Sharper Success Coaching. Like Sharper was probably the pivoting point in my ability to build and manage a team. It still took me a while to get that process figured out, but it was an extremely important process to figure out. You've got to build on the systems. I'm not a systems guy. So the first person I should have brought on was someone that could look at what I was doing. I was doing the marketing. Well. I could get my phone to ring. I was getting a significant amount of inbound phone calls a month, but I couldn't create a system around it. So I needed someone to come in and systematize it. Now, great. Let's say I can find a rock star. Let me ask y'all, like right now, anybody watching right now, would y'all mind hiring me onto your team? I've got experience in acquisitions, dispositions, transaction coordination. I've got a fairly strong background in real estate investing. I've probably knocked out a couple hundred deals myself, and I currently manage, a portfolio of about 3 to 4 million in real estate. How many people would mind having me on their team? While you're thinking about that, let me go through and talk about some other things that you need to take into consideration while building your team. Let's say I am able to find a rock star, man. They are absolutely great at systems. They are the number one person at systems. And I go out there and I'm like, man, I need systems in my business. I'm going to hire this person. This is exactly what I did. How can you hire a rock star and still mess it up? There's something that I did not realize that you need to do as a business owner. As a business owner that's going to be employing and working with people, you need to build a culture within your business. I didn't understand culture. As an introvert, I'm socially awkward at times. I don't really understand the social part of things. And when I'm working with other people, even as employee employer, I don't understand that social interaction. So the culture is a little awkward. And there's something else that you need to take into consideration when building your team, and that is what is called your core values. Now, the reason I bring that up is like a lot of people that just hopped on, I asked y'all a question. How many people would mind hiring me onto their team? I've got a lot of experience in a lot of different aspects of real estate investing. I've proven my ability to do real estate investing. Many people would probably like to have me on their team. But if you don't know what my core values are, if you don't understand my core values, let's say my core values are completely and totally different than yours, you and I are not going to get along. I don't care how good I am at what I do. I don't care how good you are at what you want to do. Let's just throw out a potential scenario. Let's say, and I'm just throwing this out hypothetically. Let's say, as you should be, you are completely and totally against unethical activity. You know, you consider lying to someone to be unethical, as you should. But this rockstar acquisitions guy that you just hired on can get you 15 contracts a day, but they lie through their teeth. They rip everyone off that they can possibly rip off. And the only thing that they're concerned about is getting a contract. There are some companies out there that are like, I'll hire that guy all day long. I don't care what he has to do. I don't care what he has to say or she has to say to get that contract. The only thing I care about is getting that contract. That person will perform really well at that company. But what if your core values just say, I can't lie to this homeowner to get a deal. I can't do it. Well, if you hire this rockstar acquisitions agent and they lie through their teeth, this is never going to work for you. So you need to establish what your core values are to decide whether or not this is somebody you're going to work with. And that's something I failed to do on every person I hired for probably close to 7 years straight. I did not understand this. I knew they could do the job. I'd hire them, but then I would find out over a short period of time, I didn't want to work with this person. Why did I not want to work with this person? Well, I assumed it was because I was an introvert and I was socially awkward. So I would let them just do their thing, but I wouldn't want to interact with them. Now, these are all things that I learned through Sharper Success Coaching. And these are like, if you want some help with doing this, I'd suggest you talk with them. This isn't a paid affiliate program. This isn't me saying I'm going to get a kickback if y'all go talk to them. This is somebody that really changed how I look at business and how I operate my business. But if their core values don't fit what you're looking to do, you're never going to work with that person. So let's say you are starting out on a budget. Let's say you are constrained on finances and you need to build this team because you can't handle 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 full-time jobs. That's why you're getting these bumps and flows in your business. Here is how you can build a team with limited income. I am a brand new real estate investor. I've got my specific skill sets. We're going to build this business scientifically. And this is what Sharper Success Coaching brought up for me. They use a tool called the Predictive Index. The Predictive Index is an interesting tool that allows you to kind of gauge your skill set. It's kind of like a disc test. It's a little more gauged towards building teams, but it gives you a chart that kind of explains who you are, how you best interact with others, how you manage others, how you like to be managed. I always thought that people like to be managed like I do. For me, I prefer to be given a high-level priority problem and then be left alone to deal with it. I don't want somebody hounding me every day saying, hey, did you get that done? Where are you at? What's going on? That frustrates me. Just let me take care of the problem, and I promise you I'll get it done better and faster than you probably expect it to happen. But if somebody's constantly micromanaging me, I won't work with that person. Well, if you like to be on a very long leash and left alone, well, then you'd probably work really well with me because that's my management style. But let's say I hire somebody that doesn't like that very lackadaisical management style. They like somebody to have constant interaction with, somebody that's constantly giving them feedback and answering their questions. That person is going to fail miserably working with me because that's not my management style. So I need to make sure that whenever I look to partner with somebody, I look at how they want to be managed, how they manage other people, as well as the core aspects of their personality that work well. I think we can all agree without any scientific formulas that there are people that are better at numbers and systems and processes, but that same person might not be as good at acquisitions. And that person that's really great at acquisitions might not necessarily be the best persons at systems and processes. So whenever I first start out and I'm a brand new real estate investor, I need to really analyze what is the core thing that I'm going to enjoy doing the most, the thing that I'm going to get energized about going to work every single day. This guy I mentioned just a while ago that pulled down $276,000 in net profit to his business in 90 days. He is a very data related person. Like, he can just go through spreadsheets and create tables and do incredible marketing things on the data side. But if he has to go out and do project management and do acquisitions, that really stresses him out. Well, he put himself in that position to do it for close to 5 years. What you're going to need to do is what gives you energy. Then you're going to have to look at what is the most important part of your business that you're failing at on a day-to-day basis. For him, he understood the data and the marketing, but he didn't want to do the acquisitions. So probably for him, he needed to hire somebody in acquisitions. Well, if he needed to hire somebody in acquisitions and he just goes out and finds a rock star acquisition agent, what did he miss? He missed the establishment of core values. He needs to understand his own personal core values. He needs to also understand the culture that he plans on setting within his business. What is the mission of the business? What is the goal of this business? The guy I'm personally referring to is very empowered by helping other veterans. He himself, being a veteran, he really finds value in helping other veterans. So maybe the culture of his company should be working with other veterans and helping other veterans get to a point in life where they find a happiness. So maybe that's the culture he needs to set. But if he doesn't know that before he starts hiring people, these people aren't going to work well with them. So you need to figure out your core values. You need to figure out your culture, and then outsource the thing that needs to be done the most that you hate. So for him, hiring acquisitions probably would have been it. How do you hire an acquisitions agent, though, if you are not, you don't have the money in the bank account to do this? Let's think about that. I've got quite a few people watching this right now. There's quite a few people that are going to watch this over the course of the next couple of weeks. Every single one of y'all are likely running a solo team. It's just you, yourself, and I. And every single one of y'all could find ways to work with each other. Maybe y'all don't live, 2 blocks away from each other. Maybe y'all both don't live in the middle of Dallas. Well, guess what? If you need a systems and process person, they don't need to be living in Dallas. Really, the only position that you might need is if you're going to do live acquisitions where you're actually going to people's properties, you're going to need boots on the ground. But these teams can be built virtually. Find ways to partner with these people, but don't just partner with anybody that raises their hand. You don't know how that's going to work out. And don't go out and set up and go through and build all the busy work of setting up the business and getting everybody on the business up front. Kind of work with each other for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months and figure out how this company works together. But you must first establish, do you have similar core values? How do you do that? I'm sure there's a whole video we could do just on talking about core values. I learned all of this from Sharper Success Coaching. If you want some coaching on that, go talk to them. But once you've established the core values, you found that you work well with these people, the thing you really need to do to make this amp up is, let's say I'm really good at marketing. They're really good at acquisitions. They're not good at marketing, so they're not getting the opportunity to do the acquisitions. I can start doing the marketing. They can start handling the acquisitions. But through this entire process, you need to figure out the system behind it, because you need to constantly be working towards building a business that gives you the freedom to relax. 100 hours a week. When you're first starting out, that might be required, but doing that for 5, 6, 7, 8 years straight, eventually you're going to burn out. And you'll see a lot of successful people where you're like, man, you did a ton of business, and they end up skipping out and moving out of the business because they're tired of that daily grind. They've made a ton of money and they're going to go jump on something else that intrigues them. But what they often find themselves doing is they go jump on that, and then they get excited, they make a ton of money, and then they get tired of the daily grind. And the reason they're getting tired of the daily grind is because they didn't build a business. They created a bunch of income. They did a bunch of things that created a profitable business from the outside looking in. But if you can't walk away from that business for 6 months and come back and it be running just as well as it was when you left, you don't have a business. So you need to be able to get yourself out of this constant daily grind of just hitting the streets, pounding the streets time after time after time. I hope that makes sense. So Once I establish the things that I'm good at in the business, I establish the things that need to be done in the business. I then look at the things that I don't want to do, and I outsource that to the people that have the similar core values and that live within the culture that I've established. Once you set systems, these systems will allow you to onboard people smoother and create checks and balances from within your company. Now that you've got that going, you've started to build your team. Once you've started to build your team, you've got to manage your team. I mentioned that the predictive index will give you feedback on how people like to be managed, and you can't just manage everybody the way you want to be managed. I hope that makes sense. But there's a book out there by Gino Wickman called Traction. If you have not read Traction and you've not read Gary Keller's The One Thing, two books that I live and die by, I think they're extremely important. But managing the business in and of itself has its own entire process that needs to be dealt with. If you're not a great manager, you hate managing people, I'm kind of one of those people, guess what? You need to find someone that is managing it, that meets your core values and that meets your culture within the company. You find these people that have a similar core value and a similar culture. What you will find is you'll see things that would have taken you 5, 6, 7, 8 years to achieve start getting done in 5, 6, 7, 8 months. And you're sitting here looking at it, it's like, man, I'm barely getting by as it is. How am I going to divide this pie up against, 2 people, 3 people, 4 people? Well, the more people you bring on, and if you establish this process correctly, that pie gets exponentially bigger. You don't build multi-billion dollar companies by yourself. You might start out by yourself, but you've got to rapidly start finding rock stars in each and every one of these core individual jobs that need to be done that match your core values and the culture of your company and allow them to do what they do best and figure out how to work with them. Now, Traction really goes through what they call the EOS system, the entrepreneurial operating systems. The book explains it in great detail. But when you start learning about EOS, there's going to be little processes that help you build this business along. Like you've got quarterly goals. Within those quarterly goals, you've got what you call your rocks. Those are your big, audacious goals that you're trying to knock out during this quarter. And then you break those down into little bitty action items, and everybody on your team has a scorecard. You look at that scorecard and they say, oh, you know what? You're supposed to be making 100 outbound phone calls a day. All right. Well, every single day you have what's called a daily stand-up. That during that daily stand-up, it's like just a 20-minute meeting, maybe less than that, depending on how big your meeting is. It doesn't go longer than that. It doesn't turn into an everyday 5-hour-long meeting. But you get on there and like, okay, acquisitions person, you're supposed to be making 100 outbound phone calls. How many outbound phone calls did you make? How many offers did you make? All right, you're supposed to make 100 outbound phone calls. You're supposed to make 100 offers, and you're supposed to do X, Y, and Z. You look through that scorecard, and you've got green, good, yellow, what happened, red, complete and total stop. What happened? Oh, okay, your dialer went down yesterday, or this went down. Solve that problem. But you have developed scorecards for your level 10 or for your daily stand-ups that give you just a real quick update on how the company is running. Okay. Your acquisitions person has their scorecards. Your dispo person has their scorecards. Your marketing person, all these different people have metrics that have been designed to gauge really quickly, are they doing what they need to be doing? And that's your daily stand-up. Outside of your daily stand-up, you're going to have level 10 meetings or same page meetings. Your level 10 meetings are going to be the things where you identify your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And these are maybe hour-long meetings. Up front, you kind of all pitch what some of the wins are that you're seeing, some of the opportunities that you're seeing, and some of the threats that you're seeing. And you take each one of these little pieces and you decide which ones are the biggest topics for us to discuss today. And you go through and you tackle those for your business. You maybe have that level 10 once a week. 2 times a week, maybe 3 times a week. It's not an everyday type of thing, but you go through and you analyze what's your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and you discuss these in the name of it. Israel's asking me to repeat the name of the books I'm talking about. The 2 that I would strongly recommend based upon this conversation are Gino Wickman's Traction and Gary Keller's The One Thing. Those are 2 books that I really strongly suggest you dive in on. But the last and final piece to all of this is your same page meeting, where you and your core partners are on a conversation at least a weekly, where you're like, okay, are we on track for our quarterly goals? Is there something we need to modify with our quarterly goals? What are we doing? Why are we hitting our targets? Why are we not hitting our targets? How's the income looking? And then that way, so your core management team is on the same page. You go through your level 10, so that way everybody you're working with has the opportunity to voice the opportunities and threats that they're seeing hit in your business. And if you build your business like this, you will find yourself leapfrogging years ahead of people. You're going to get yourself in a position where you're able to go from having nothing to something in a very short period of time. And if you don't have the budget to start hiring these people, you need to understand the power of partnerships. A lot of people look at this as like, partnerships fail. I can't stand it. I tried this 2 times. It didn't work. It does work. You had failures in your process, just like there's failures in other things. You have to figure out what your failures were and work through it again. A partnership is similar to a marriage. Like, you don't just date someone for 8 minutes and say, you know what, let's go get married. Some people do. I don't think that works out very often, but you really need to understand that the partnership's more like a dating scenario. It's like, okay, what are your core values? What is the culture? Can you and I work together? Do we get along well enough that we can make this business work? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Do we offset each other in such ways that they have their lane, I have my lane, and we can both flourish? So take all that into consideration when building your team. Don't be afraid of partnering. Make sure you do it right. Make sure you go through. If you've had failed partnerships in the past, don't discount them, especially if you're on a low budget. You're going to need to have someone that you can rely on and lean on. But with all those things taken into consideration, that's my input on building a team. I hope y'all got some value out of this conversation. I hope that y'all got some insight into some of the things that I would consider to be extremely important. If you want some help on that, reach out to Sharper Success Coaching. I really consider them to be a pivoting point in my own business. So no affiliate there. There's no sales pitch on that side. Just go check them out. But all those things to be said, if there's any questions here, I'd gladly take them. I'll stay live here for another 4 or 5 minutes to take a couple of follow-up questions. But at the end of the day, those are the things that really changed how I ran my business. And I've gone through that process probably 3 or 4 times, and it's painful. It hurts. There's nothing worse than going out, hiring a person, 2 people, 3 people, and finding that, the culture isn't what you expected because you weren't building the culture. The core values weren't what you were expected because you weren't building and hiring based upon core values. And you find yourself with a team of people that don't like working with you. They're like, I like you, I like you, I like you. But when we all start working together, none of it works out. Well, why didn't it work out? It's because I didn't take into consideration the requirements. I didn't take into consideration all of these little things that are important to building a business. We've all studied real estate investing. We all understand the different aspects of real estate investing, but to actually make real estate automated and work, you need to study business. And that's what I've been talking about during this call, is how to build a business, how to structure a business around real estate, and hope that gave you the insight that you need to not make some of the mistakes I made on getting here. So Christian says, where do you find these people to hire for marketing/acquisitions? For me, on my side, most of these came from networking events, where, I find people that I naturally am getting along with. And then through those conversations, I start talking to them. It's like, hey, here's some of the really things that I'm doing really good in my business. Like, I'm really doing good on the marketing side, or I'm really doing good on the acquisition side, but I'm struggling over here. And you might have someone come back with the exact opposite. It's like, man, I can't get my phone to ring for nothing. But when I go on an appointment, every appointment I go on, I get a contract, it's discounted, and I'm able to dispo it, but I can only get like maybe 1 or 2 appointments every couple of months. And, this other person's like, man, I can get my phone to ring all day long, but I'm scared to get on the phone. And when I get on the phone, I'm awkward. Well, that sounds like a relationship that can be built, but don't mistake the importance of the predictive index, figuring out how this person likes to be managed, figuring out what their core values are, figuring out what the culture that you're wanting to create is. And if you do that up front, that relationship will likely work out 10 times better than if you just hit the ground and said, you know what, I'm going to just partner up with anybody that has the skill sets I need and hope it works, because it doesn't. Okay. I got another question coming in. I appreciate it, Javi. Excuse me if I said your name wrong. Matt Smith, do you ever hire not by pay, but just on performance? You'd have to kind of figure out the performance level up front, but, up front, I'm kind of looking at partnerships. I'm looking at deal splits, because if I don't have any capital, I can't really pay them outside of performance. Like if they knock a deal down, but, you've got to really find the right person that's up for that. Like, a lot of salesmen are used to working off commissions, but if you're going to hire a salesman that's used to working off of commissions or something along those lines, they better have the opportunity to make to make those commissions. You better have the marketing figured out. You have to have something put in place that makes sense, that they're going to be able to create the income they need to in a short period of time. So if you are doing it on performance, then you better have the team to back up their performance. Like, let's say I've got an acquisitions person and I don't have transaction coordination figured out. I don't have dispo figured out. I don't have marketing figured out. If they agree to work off of performance, that's great, but they're performing, the other rest of the team's not. So you got to figure out all aspects of that. Hey, Elizabeth, how are you doing? Israel, how do you know what to pay the acquisition and marketing people? That's going to really be up to you in the current situation you're in. Like, if you've got a rock star team already and you've got marketing figured out, you've got a massive amount of inbound phone calls, you've got a lot of opportunity for these people, you've got transaction coordination figured out, you've got dispo figured out, pay these people well. Like, if they're a rock star acquisitions person, pay that person well. But you might be able to say, you know what, for the first 5 contracts you get a month, you get 20% of the net proceeds. If you get over 10 contract, that goes up. If you get over 10 closings, that goes up to 35% of each and every deal. And if you get over 15 contracts a month, you get 45% of the deal. Gives them incentives to get more and more and more as long as they hit dispo. Is there an hourly standard? It really depends upon the position. There's all different kinds of positions to go in. Transaction coordinator might get paid per closing. They might get paid hourly. Your office manager is likely going to get paid hourly. It all depends upon the actual team you're building. And for me personally, I never built a big wholesaling team. I don't like wholesaling. I prefer rehabbing. Like, I'll rehab all day long, and rehabbing is a lot simpler. It's like they're contractors. They're all paid by the job. You might have some in-house people that get paid by the hour, but for the most part, building a contracting team is a lot simpler. But if you're doing wholesaling, percentages on acquisitions, dispositions are all things that are common. Like on dispo, they'll say, here is the goal that I'm looking to have it sold for. If you get it sold for that price, you get XYZ. Anything less than that, it starts getting cut out of your commission, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So all those things are great questions. If there's no other questions coming in, I appreciate your time. I look forward to this. I'll upload this to YouTube a little later today for those that want to rewatch it. And I appreciate y'all. For everybody that's watching that's never heard of Propelio, Propelio.com gives you access to direct mail, gives you access to skip tracing, access to lead capture websites for your business, national lead lists, as well as national MLS comps, and a Driving for Dollars app to run your Driving for Dollars business. So if you need a mobile app, if you need websites, comps, skip tracing, direct mail, any of those types of things, check out Propelio.com. I appreciate the day. Y'all have a good one. Let me see here. I got to figure out how to end my live. I had a problem with my system today. Let me see if I can figure out how to end the live. I don't know how to end the live, actually. There we go. Y'all have a good one.